I don't know if you ever heard of Elmer Mccurdy, but let me get that chat up to where I can see the chat. But he was well known for. There we go. He was well known for being very strange while he lived, and then even stranger after he died. And it says Elmer McCurdy was not the type of man one would expect to remain infamous over 100 years after his death. He was born in 1880. Even his arrival in the world was a bit strange. His mother, Sadie McCurdy, was only 17 years old at the time of his birth. She was unmarried, and Elmer was adopted by Sadie's brother, who and his wife, who raised him. Not long after Elmer's father, who was his actual uncle, died, Sadie admitted that she was Elmer's mother. Shocked and traumatized by this revelation, Elmer went from a normal child to a teen alcoholic prone to acting out. And it gets better. So Elmer then moved in with his grandmother and found work as an apprentice plumber, a job at which he excelled, making comfortable living and for quite some time. But in 1898, the economic downturn that had begun in 1893 had made its way to the McCurdy house. Elmer lost his job, and within 3 years, Elmer's mother, grandfather had died. Grandmother and grandfather had died, and Elmer no longer was able to hold a job. He began drifting around the Northeast, offering his services as a miner and a plumber wherever possible. Eventually, Elmer ended up in Missouri, where he joined the Army. There, he was trained in using bombs, explosives, and things like that. After an honorable discharge, Elmer began to use his skills in understanding how to make bombs to burglarize people's homes and trains. Elmer and a friend were even arrested and sent to trial for possessing tools used in the burglary. All the bomb making stuff, all that stuff was there. They were able to convince the judge that the tools were not uh, for a machine gun. They were inventing, so they've kind of hoodooed the judge here and believing that what they were using all that stuff for was not for robbing. After leaving the trail, Elmer began his stint as a train robber and a bank robber. In earnest, although the limited training he had received in making these nitroglycerins often meant that his robbery attempts were less than professional. One attempt to blast a safe door off, Elmer used far too much nitroglycerin, causing most of the money and goods in the safe to be destroyed. And in another attempt, Elmer's charge failed to ignite, leaving the would-be robbers to scrounge for whatever cash was not locked up. And it says Harley stuff of Jesse James. That is for sure. Elmer's next attempt took place in October 1911. He and two friends heard that the train was coming. We'd be carrying about 400,000 in cash. The men stopped the train, but quickly discovered that it was only a passenger train. They managed to eke out about $46, which that's not a lot at all, and some whiskey. So they didn't get much out of that. Elmer was holed up in a barn with whiskey and was ill and drunk when police showed up to make good on a $2,000 reward on his head. On October 7th, he was shot and killed. Now, this is where the story gets weird. if it ain't already weird enough. Um, yeah, wow. Um, Elmer's body was taken to a funeral home and left unclaimed. It's going to get strange. Joseph Johnson, the owner of the home that embalmed the body, uh, I can't do this without laughing too because it is kind of funny. He preserved the body, kept all of its features, body intact, everything. Right. When months stretched without an owner receiving payment or him getting repayment or anybody coming around to claim the body of the the body of the bandit wouldn't give up. Okay, so he's going to do something here to make money back, right? So he embalmed this body. Nobody's ever claimed it. Nobody's ever made a payment for it. So he became a far more popular attraction than Johnson could have dreamed. So what he does is he takes them around to carnivals and these uh, kind of oddity tents and stuff and shows them off and makes money off this dead body. Um, and I don't know how he preserved it well enough not to stink. Hey bud, how are you? Um, so he's preserved this body, but then 5 years later, um, two men. Now here's the thing. What happened was there were some carnival owners, circus people wanted to take the body from him and offer to put him in their circus. He said no, absolutely not. So, but then 5 years later, two men claiming to be McCurdy's brothers show up. Unable to refuse them, Johnson handed the body over. Oh, God. The men were actually James and Charles Patterson, owners of a carnival. So there you go. That's how they got him. They featured they featured McCurdy's body for 7 more years. At which point the carnival was sold wholesale and to Louis Sawney. When Louis Sawney died, the body was placed in storage. God. It made appearances in movies in 1967 called She Freak. With his son's permission, it was sold a few. It was in a movie too. It was sold to a few other oddity displayers through the 1960s and 70s. We're still going here. At some point, it was left hanging inside a museum or amusement park funhouse. Could you imagine that being in a funhouse? This dead body has been gone. The sucker's been dead like 70 years. McCurdy's body was rediscovered by a television crew in 1967. After a long examination, it was re-identified as McCurdy after 75 years of odd expedition or I can't even talk of all these carnivals and all these displays and stuff. McCurdy's body was finally laid to rest and covered in 2 feet of concrete to keep anyone from being a grave robber. So, wow.